Sprite has come to Master Duel, and so today I'm going to show you basically the most basic pure Sprite deck, and then I'll also show you some of the combos. So there's basically like one big introduction to Sprite for Master Duel players who have not been playing it in the TCG yet. I have, so hopefully I can add some interesting perspective for you. If you still need a beautiful playmat, go to zerodamagegaming.com and use the code SOLEMN for a discount. Now for the deck, if you don't know what Sprite even does, Sprite as an archetype is essentially a bunch of level 2 monsters that synergize with other level 2 monsters. And so you are basically able to spam your field full of these little level 2s and just plus a billion. This means that if you think, this level 2 monster is pretty good, Sprite will probably work with it. So that is basically like the most bare bones way Sprite works. And now for the list. First of all, I'm playing triple effect failure. You will notice I play a shit ton of hand traps. And that is because Sprite is actually a very, very small engine. That's also the most powerful thing about Sprite when these first came out in the TCG. You could literally have a deck with like 20 non-engine cards, then a couple Sprite cards, and so every single hand you opened like 2 or 3 hand traps, so your opponent could never play. And then you could set up and you basically won. So even though effect failure is usually seen as like a not super impactful hand trap, it is still played in the deck because we can simply run that many. It also pairs really well with Nibiru, which we also play. Next we have Swap Frog. Swap Frog is a level 2, and now you might think, if you're more experienced, hey, Swap Frog's whole goal in Sprite was to make Totally Awesome, but Totally Awesome got banned before Sprite's release. Why would you still play Swap Frog? The reason is that Swap Frog dumps your Ronin Totem, and Ronin Totem is the most broken extender Sprite could possibly ask for. It's just endless recursion upon endless recursion. Beyond that, Swap Frog also allows you to bounce max C. So when you open Swap Frog with extenders, you know you will not only make a board, but you will also always have a confirmed max C. So if your opponent now tries to break the board, they have to pray that they have the Ash Called By or crossed out, or they don't even get to break the board, because you'll draw so many cards of max C as they try to break the board that you'll draw into hand traps, which will then, even if their futile attempt works, they're playing under max C. You already won. So for that reason, Swap Frog is still in. Despite not being able to make Totally Awesome, just the fact that you have your Ronin Totem, which endlessly gives you new field, and then also being able to bounce max C, it still has a spot in my opinion. So next we have the one Ronin Totem. Like I said, if you don't know what this does, it says if this card is in your graveyard, you can banish one frog monster from your graveyard, special summon this card. So you will literally just banish a Swap Frog, get a Ronin Totem back, and just keep that rolling until you run out of Swap Frogs, basically. Next, Max C. As you can see, Max C is level 2. Interesting. It's almost as if there's like an archetype that really works well with level 2s and can surge them and stuff. That's crazy. So yeah, Max C, 3 off broken card, and Sprite is basically an archetype that abuses this even further. Next we have 3 Nimble Beaver. Nimble Beaver is just 2 level 2 bodies on its own, so when you open a Nimble Beaver and you don't get hand trapped, Nimble Beaver by itself is already full Sprite combo. So you just go Nimble Beaver, get everything for free, and the rest of your hand could be hand traps, so you could have 1 Nimble Beaver, 4 hand traps, and now your opponent needs to break a board, a full Sprite board on top of all these hand traps. So again, that's why it's really solid, and it's also water, meaning it works well with Swap Frog. Next we have triple Sprite Blue. Sprite Blue is the best Sprite in the game because it gets you all the other sprites. And then we have Sprite Jet, which is the second best Sprite in the game because this one gets you all the Sprite spells. So like usually the way it'll work is you have a blue in hand, you get any level 2 out, you special out the blue, which gets you the Jet, and then Jet gets you either Starter, which then gets you Red or Carrot, or it gets you Smasher, and Smasher is just a crazy form of disruption. Next we have Sprite Red. Sprite Red is a monster negate, and then we have a Sprite Carrot, which is a spell and trap negate. Next we have triple Ash, because of course it is Ash, and then 2 Nibiru, which is something we want to be drawing off our max C if our opponent, takes the max C challenge. However, it is very important to note that at 3, I don't really like it, because if you do draw this, like going first, it's gonna suck. You don't want to wipe your own board. So 2 is fine. Then we have 2 triple tactics talents, because, well, you have room for non-engine, and triple tactics is a really solid way to play. Also, since a lot of other people are going to be playing sprites, if you steal your opponent's sprite monsters, now you can special summon out your own again. So maybe they have like a Sprite Red on board with an elf or something. You can literally go triple tactics, steal their red, and now you have a level 2 on board, so you can special out your own Jet and Blue and so forth. But again, I'm going to do the combos later so you can see all of that. Next we have Pot of Prosperity. Even though it's only 1, Pot of Prosperity was always in all the Sprite decks in the TCG, because this deck does sometimes feel like it lacks starters. Since you have so many non-engine cards, like all these hand traps and so forth, and so few things to actually start playing, Pot of Prosperity would often get you like the starter or the Nimble Beaver or something like that. But here crits at 1, so we'll still play the 1. Next, we have 2 Cosmic Cyclone. Again, I believe Runics are going to be absolutely broken as fuck. I think Runic Sprite is going to be insane, and so I do want to have main decked something to get rid of the damn fountain. If you're not afraid of Runic, or you notice, hey, no one in my ranking is currently playing the Runic Sprite deck, then you can cut the Cosmic Cyclone for even more hand traps. Maybe it's like an Ogre, I don't know, maybe some other non-engine. It's up to you really, but you can cut these if you notice Runic is not a big deck. Though again, this is also great into Mathmech, great into Sword Soul, great into Branded. So it's not really a bad card or anything. Next, we have 2 Called by the Grave to not get Max Seed, and Cross Out to not get Max Seed. Also extra good in this deck because we have so many hand traps. We will also have all the Cross Out targets. Like we get Veilard, Cross Out. We get Ashed, Cross Out. We get Impert, Cross Out. We get Max Seed, Cross Out. We get Nibiru, Cross Out. 2 Sprite Starter. This basically special summons any Sprite from the deck, and as I said, blue is the best one. So usually it's going to be Sprite Starter, get out a blue. Blue gets you something else, but usually that's going to be Jet and so forth. But so yeah, Sprite Starter, often finding blue. Just remember that. Then we have 1 Sprite Smashers. This is just a crazy interruption. Again, every single board you're going to try to have like the Sprite Elf, maybe an IP, and then a set Smashers. That's a really solid board, backed up by a bunch of hand traps. And then 3 Imperm. Imperm is really, really powerful. It's obviously a hand trap, but the reason it's extra powerful is because Sprite would always do something like, let's say you opened Nimble Beaver, right? You would go Nimble Beaver, special out blue, and now you're like, okay, I want to play around any hand trap, you know, I don't want to get Ashed, I don't want to get Veilard and so forth. So then you would go find Sprite Red. You special out Sprite Red. So your field is now Beaver, Beaver, blue, red. You think, cool, now I can resolve my gigantic Sprite without getting hand trapped. And then there he is. Imperm on gigantic Sprite. Boom. Field gets much, much weaker because of that. But if they get Sprite Carrot instead to play around Imperm, now they're losing to all the other monster hand traps. It's basically almost always correct to go for Sprite Red, but then you always get punished by Imperm. Remember that. That's why Imperm is so good. Once we get Tearlaments into the game, this is going to be even better because Imperm on Kid Kalos is just oof. Sometimes it ends the turn. This is the main deck. Overall, pretty happy with this. Again, if you notice, not that many Runics, just cut out the Cosmic Cyclones. Easy. Even more hand traps in the deck. Then for the extra deck, pretty standard. You'll notice like Sprite extra decks are almost always virtually the same. We have 1 Djinn Buster. This is a negate, and all you need is 2 level 2 dark monsters. And guess what? Sprite Blue and Sprite Jet are both level 2 dark monsters, so very often, depending on your opening hand, you're going to have 1 more negate this way. Then we have Sky Cavalry Centaur. The only thing you need to know about this card is it's your way to Zeus. You can literally just make this, and then you can attack something and return that monster to the hand, and then this guy won't be destroyed by a battle. So this makes it so that no matter what your opponent's board is, you will be able to have an Xyz survive. So you can Centaur, put a Downerd on top, put a Zeus on top, and then just, you know, Zeus your opponent's board. Then we have a Cat Shark. Cat Shark basically makes your OTK lines. So you notice, Sprites, you know, cool, level 2s, but all these level 2s have low attack. All these rank 2s have low attack. All these link 2s have low attack. How am I actually killing people? And the way you kill people is Cat Shark. As you can see, it says target 1 rank 4 or lower Xyz monster you control, its attack defense becomes double its original attack / defense. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna make a gigantic Sprite and you're gonna have a link monster under it. That's right, gigantic Sprite can use link 2 monsters as level 2 monsters for its Xyz material. So you can have like a Nimble Beaver plus an IP. Overlay them for Xyz to make a gigantic Sprite. And when you do that, it says the original attack of this card that has a Fusion Synchro Xyz or link monster as material becomes doubled. So gigantic Sprite becomes a 3200 attack monster when there's a link 2 under it. Now Cat Shark says its attack defense becomes double. That means you now have a 6400 attack gigantic Sprite, and that makes it so you can really easily do an OTK line if necessary. That's why Cat Shark is in here. Next we have Onibimaru. This will basically just remove stuff for you. Your opponent, you know, has a hard to break board. Onibimaru will probably help. Then we have 2 gigantic Sprite. This basically searches any Sprite from the deck, any level 2 from the deck even, and so you can either find like your Sprite cards, maybe your Swap Frog to dump a Ronin, maybe your Maxi. Gigantic Sprite is basically like the glue that holds everything together in Sprite. Next we have Downerd Magician. This is a new material for Zeus. So the way this works is you can put this on top of a smaller Xyz just for free. So like you can make a Sky Cavalry, it attacks, that in main phase 2 you can just put the Downerd on top. like nothing happened. And then you can put the Zeus on top, like nothing happened. And now you have a Zeus with a bunch of materials, so it could wipe the board twice. So that's why we have Down Earth plus Zeus. Of course, this assumes that you're not locked into level 2s. Both Sprite Starter and Gigantic Sprite actually make it so you can't even summon anything but level 2s or rank 2s or link 2s. So do keep that in mind. You can't Zeus people after activating Starter or Gigantic. Sometimes you gotta play around that. Then we have IP Masquerena, which is usually gonna be on your end board in order to unicorn people in their own turn. Then we have a Dark, because this is crazy in the Sprite mirror. Just being able to turn, you know, like a Beaver plus a Jet into a Dark, getting your opponent's blue from their graveyard, activating the blue, searching the red, special summoning that. Like, Dark is just a really powerful card in the mirror because blue and Jet are both Dark. Then we have Sprite Elf. I'm currently playing 3. If you don't have 3, you can definitely play 2. It is a very, very rare that the 3 is gonna come up. Heck, if you want, you could even play like an Almirage instead, like if you want, because then you can Swap Frog, dump Ronin, and then turn Swap Frog into an Almirage. Ronin comes back with Almirage. Ronin plus Almirage makes Sprite Elf, and then Sprite Elf revives the Ronin. Overlay for Gigantic. I guess that's actually better. Yeah, very impromptu. Was just thinking about that. So yeah, maybe an Almirage instead. Again, just the line that I just told you. So yeah, 2 Sprite Elf is fine. Some people play 3 when the deck first came out. It's definitely possible to play 3 if you have the room. Then the Unicorn to make with IP. Then finally, I play an access code, because I do find sometimes you don't necessarily have access to the Cat Shark line, and then OTKing is a bit hard. And literally just being able to go like summon, 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 make an access code, boom, is sometimes like the really good follow-up to kill. Now, if you don't want to use access code, if you don't feel like you need it, this could also be something like an Appaloosa to have more monster negates, or an Avramax. Avramax was often used in Sprite to make out of an IP in your opponent's turn, because it's hard to out. But it was hard to out because everyone was playing Tier. Tier doesn't exist in Master Duel, so Avramax isn't that crazy just yet. If everyone is playing Sprite, you activate 1 Smashers and the Avramax is gone. So, you know, keep that in mind. This can be Avramax, but I don't really know how good it is going to be just yet for this format. So that is the list. Just in a solo mode, because it's going to be easier. There's no time, so I have like time to explain you everything. So this hand, I'll just show you first what happens when you have any level 2 plus a Sprite Blue. So we're going to just normal summon our Ronin Totem, which is a level 2. And now you notice, hey, I can special summon my Sprite Blue. So I'm going to special summon my Sprite Blue. And then Sprite Blue will activate, will allow me to search for, say, Sprite Jet. Alright, we are going to special summon Sprite Jet, and we'll activate Sprite Jet. This time, let's go for Starter. Could definitely do other stuff as well, like with Smasher, but I'm just going to show you Starter. We're going to get Starter, and this will special summon our red. So now we have a monster negate, meaning we cannot get Veilard, Ash, Nibiru, and so forth. From here, there are a few options. So first of all, we could get very greedy, overlay the Sprite Blue and the Jet for a Djinn Buster, and that way we will have, you know, an extra monster negate. But we could also not be greedy and just go for a Gigantic Sprite. Personally, let's just go for a Gigantic Sprite right here. So we're going to get our Ronin Totem and our Sprite Jet, creating a beautiful Gigantic Sprite. Oh, look at that animation. Beautiful. So now we're going to activate Gigantic Sprite. As you know, it can special summon level 2s. I am going to special summon specifically the Swap Frog, because Swap Frog will allow me to have even more extension with the Ronin Totem. You could also special summon Carrot if you want access to Spell and Trap Disruption. So we're sending the Swap Frog right here. Again, I'm not using the cards in my hand because I simply want to show you what happens without them. So now we want to turn the Gigantic Sprite and the Swap Frog into a Sprite Elf. And we want to put the Sprite Elf to where its arrow points at Sprite Red, because Sprite Elf actually has targeting protection to the things it's pointing to. So right now, this Sprite Red cannot be targeted. So next, we will activate Sprite Elf, and we will special out the Jet, and we will overlay into Djinn Buster. So now, technically, we already have like a board with 2 monster negates, okay? But in our opponent's turn, our Sprite Elf can actually get back our blue after we detach it from the Djinn Buster. And that way we search more Sprite cards to play on the next turn. Another option though is we can activate the Ronin Totem and then make an IP. So we could activate Ronin Totem, banish our Swap Frog, activate Ronin Totem, special summon it. And then we can make an IP Masquerena out of the red and the Ronin Totem, just like that. Now, on our opponent's turn, we can activate Elf to revive the Sprite Red. But beyond that, since Ronin Totem isn't even once per turn, you could also activate the Ronin Totem right now, banishing the other Swap Frog. And that way, you have this Ronin Totem on the board. And the good thing about having the Ronin Totem on the board is that when you activate Elf to bring back Red next turn, Red will actually need to tribute this Ronin Totem to do its monster negate. So this way you have like a free body here to actually do all of that. So if you look at this board, it doesn't look crazy, right? But remember, this was done with just those 2 cards. All these other cards could be crazy other stuff. It could be 3 hand traps for all you know. And as you can see right now, it's already 2 hand traps. So now we would set our Imperm, again, because we're playing like a bunch of hand traps. And then it's basically our opponent's turn. So they special summon a Ritual Raven. I don't even know if I care, but I'll activate my Sprite Elf right here to get the Sprite Red back. And so now this board has 2 monster negates, a spin, and then whatever hand traps and so forth you have. So overall pretty solid, but there's way more you can do, of course. So now let's try another combo. So in this hand, I'm going to show you what happens if you open only a Nimble Beaver. So that means the rest is going to be hand traps, going second cards, you know, stuff like that. We ignore the Ronin Totem, we ignore everything. We're just going to use our little Nimble Beaver. All right, Nimble Beaver. Effect activates, you get another beaver. So that means we have a 1-card gigantic sprite. So then our gigantic sprite activates. So now we choose our Sprite Blue, because again, it's the best sprite. So it's going to get us our other sprite cards. We get ourselves Jet. We special summon Jet. And this time, let's take Smashers. But again, if you take Starter, you can also make a bigger board with a red and so forth. But we're going to take Smashers because it's a really strong card as well. Next, we will make a Sprite Elf out of the gigantic and the Jet. Now Elf will activate, getting back our Jet, or whatever you prefer, can be anything. And now here you again have some choices. You can either turn it into a Djinn Buster, so you have an extra monster negate, or you can go for IP, so you can do the Unicorn play. Now let's go for IP, and then we set ourselves a Smashers. And again, we can set the Imperm and so forth, but basically 1 Nimble Beaver generated Elf, IP, and the Smashers. And then in our opponent's turn, we are actually going to be able to revive our Sprite Jet, which searches Sprite Starter, and then Sprite Starter makes the whole Sprite combo by itself again. Like Sprite Starter gets you a blue, blue gets you a Jet, and so forth. Or like you go blue goes into red, blue plus red goes into gigantic, gigantic gets you something else, and again, boom, the whole board out of nowhere. And remember, you still have 4 cards in your hand right now. Hand traps, Nibiru's, and so forth. This is what makes Sprite so good. You have like very few cards required to make pretty okay boards, and then you have just endless resource generation with a billion hand traps. Okay, for this next combo, I'm gonna show you how Swap Frog plus another Sprite can actually add a max C to your hand. So we're going to start off by summoning our Swap Frog. And we'll activate his effect to dump Ronin Totem. This means we will have, once again, another way to extend further. Then we will special summon our Sprite Jet. And Sprite Jet will get, well, Starter, since we already have Smasher in our hand. But even so, you would probably want to have Starter regardless, just because you want to be able to have like a bigger combo. So Sprite Starter gets us our blue. Next, blue activates. And in order to be safe from hand traps, we're going to get ourselves a red. Now again, if you're afraid of Imperm, you can get Carrot instead. I think we're more afraid of the monster one. So now we have a bunch of monsters here, and we're going to use them. So we're going to make a gigantic sprite out of our Jet and our blue. Now gigantic sprite will activate his effect, and we will search our max C, because max C is level 2. Crazy. Then we will activate the Swap Frog to return the max C to our hand. Next, we will create the Sprite Elf out of gigantic and swap. So we have Elf once again. Let the arrow point to your red so it is protected from a bunch of targeting. Next, we activate Elf. And we're going to try to get back something like our blue. Then we're going to activate the Ronin Totem. Again, this is why we're still playing Swap Frog and Ronin Totem, even without the Totally Awesome. I think that's going to be correct in this pure Sprite build. And then we're going to turn the Ronin Totem and the Sprite Blue into an IP to have one more disruption. So as you can see, this end board is a red, a Sprite Elf, an IP, and then all the other cards you had in your hand. Like, this was just 2 cards. It was the Swap Frog and a Sprite. Preferably Jet or Blue, but we play 6 of those basically. Then all the other cards can be hand traps, or because we drew Smashers, it'll be Smashers. And you get a free Max C on top of that. And Max C, of course, is broken, because now, if our opponent doesn't have the Ash or the Callby for it, they will never be able to break this board. This Max C is going to draw us a billion other cards. So this is basically why Swap Frog gets to add you your Max C, and I think that is going to be very solid. This was the intro to Sprite. Just a brief little overview. Hope you found this very interesting. Again, if you need a beautiful beautiful playmat, go to zerodamagegaming.com and use the code SOLEM for a discount. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Ciao.